Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, guys, gals, and non-aligned pals. Welcome, if you will, AwesomeMania's online special. Because AwesomeMania is now the only panel to have been at every version of AwesomeCon, including AwesomeCon Online. My name's Ben Taylor, aka, let's think. Just to fill you in on the podcast, I have myself a random nickname for every episode. So this time, my name's Ben Taylor, aka Isolation Beard. Because it's quite great. And with me is my AwesomeMania co-host, Michael Lindenbaum. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, how's the undisputed champion of AwesomeMania doing, Ben?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
So, for those of you who have never been to AwesomeMania and ask what AwesomeMania is, AwesomeMania is the panel that we do at AwesomeCon every year, where we talk about the state of professional wrestling. Yeah, that's right. Men in their underwear throwing each other around a ring with ropes. Sometimes there's baby oil. Sometimes there's ladders and tables. Who knows? But we've been doing this since the very first AwesomeCon, which you can see in the stamp. Made it established 2013. Got bugged for about every year. Start a podcast. So last year, we finally did. And we are doing AwesomeMania as a podcast. So, what is professional wrestling? I'm going to do this a bit more broad. I'm not going to go into details. We're not going to sit here and discuss the state of the 2-day WrestleMania, which I predicted last year.
You actually did predict that last year on the panel.
At AwesomeCon, yes. We're not going to do any of that. We're just going to talk about the broad strokes of what wrestling is, how we got into it, what it means to us, and kind of take it from there. So, what is wrestling, Mike?
Professional wrestling.
Professional wrestling.
Yes. Professional wrestling is pretty much storytelling in the ring with athletics. While many will try to say, oh, it's fake, it's more like ballet. That's not necessarily the case, as we see with people getting injured all the time doing this.
Yep.
Outcomes are predetermined, but it's the story themselves that are actually told in the ring that compels us.
Yeah,
to be invested into.
I always the cliche is that wrestling is soap operas, but for people that like to watch people hitting each other. And it's a traditional thing is you have a good guy and a bad guy, which in terminology, wrestling has its own terminology, like a lot of things. Good guys are known as faces, bad guys are known as heels, and traditionally, you have a face and a heel facing off in either a very simple storyline, which could be something as good as simple as you're very good at doing the wrestling, I'm very good at doing the wrestling. Let's do the wrestling and see who is better at the wrestling. Or it can be something incredibly convoluted, like I'm in love with girl A, but girl A is also fancied by heel B, and heel B and girl A are a team, and I want to date girl, and at the end we have a match and girl A, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or it can be women's storylines about again who's better at doing the wrestlings, or it can be things about old. It's the funny thing is, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, like, the interesting thing about professional wrestling, kind of like with a soap opera, is that the stories are endless. Yeah, certain stories can be rehashed years later, which
Sure.
they do, but like the way all these stories can be are is just endless on what they can do
Yeah.
in that regards.
Yeah. The way I always like to put it is, and as much as the matches are really cool, and they are really cool, and there are many different types of wrestling, and we can go into we can go into some of those in a moment. The way I always like to put it is, watching a wrestling show isn't about the wrestling, about the stuff that's happening around the wrestling, right? It's like the Muppet Show, and I've used this analogy at AwesomeCon before. It's like the Muppet Show. The Muppet Show wasn't about what was happening on the stage; those were just there to be cool acts. It was about all the stuff that was going on backstage with Fozzie and Kermit and Gonzo and Miss Piggy and all that. And wrestling is exactly the same. It's about all the stuff that's going on around the wrestling. Um,
It's still one of the best analogies I've ever heard about professional wrestling.
yeah, yeah. Because it involves the Muppets, but that's a different panel. One you will not be seeing at AwesomeCon Online. I didn't submit it because I'm an idiot. Anyway, yeah. So there are different kinds of wrestling. You'll hear a lot of people talking about, for example, the WWE, which is probably the biggest, but the biggest
Promotion.
promotion. You'll also hear a lot of talk about AEW, All Elite Wrestling, who are, I'm going to call them the young upstarts, but they are definitely a new company. Have a lot of weight behind them that are looking to be challenging the WWE. You'll hear about Impact. You'll hear about NWA. You'll hear about all kinds of
Yeah. And then also you have like your heavy hitters like out in overseas, like New Japan Pro Wrestling as well.
pro wrestling. You have a bunch of. There are all kinds of promotions all over the world. There are different kinds of wrestling, right? Um, and everyone seems to have a favorite, right? Whether it's you like watching two big, beefy people slapping each other a lot, watching strong style. Whether you like watching submission-based wrestling, which is tying your opponents up in a bunch of holds. Whether you like watching super athletic, flippy kind of wrestling, otherwise sometimes known as the Mexican style of lucha libre.
Yep.
Whether you like watching
tag team wrestling,
many hardcore wrestling, deathmatch wrestling. There's a lot out there. We could sit here and talk about the nuances of wrestling for a very, very long. Want to know more about that? Check out the URL below. That's our podcast archive. Warning: our podcast is for adults. Unlike this panel, doing on. One thing that we did want to talk about a little bit is how we came to be introduced to wrestling.
Yep.
So Mike, why don't you?
So I actually have an interesting introduction to wrestling, and it actually wasn't watching. So I used to get bullied all the time in school as a kid, and I remember in middle school that was like the height of the Attitude Era. Of course, I didn't know that at the time until much later. And there was this kid always behind me, rock bottoming his binder into my back all the time. So that was kind of like my introduction to school or to professional wrestling. It wasn't until like late 2000 when I really, I just stumbled upon it on TV and I started watching. And this was actually around the time when like who ran over Stone Cold Steve Austin, and they're building up to that big Armageddon Hell in a Cell match in December. And the thing that drew me was the fact that you had all these interlocking storylines coming together. You had the storyline about who ran over Stone Cold and trying to figure out who it was, which you learned that it was Rikishi, and he did it for The Rock. And Rock and Austin obviously have a history with each other. And then you find out that Triple H is aligned with Rikishi, which then you know that Triple H and Stone Cold have history apparently with each other. And this is me. yeah, and then Kurt Angle's involved, and he's involved with Triple H because of the title, and with Stephanie, and
Stephanie stuff, yeah.
yeah, and then like Undertaker's in there, and he wants the title, and he's been screwed over by Kurt and stuff like that. So like you have all these interlocking storylines within one, and how it was being told was really great, and then it culminated in this massive match, which in Hell in a Cell, and that's what really drew me into professional wrestling, and then also the fallout afterwards of where they took it after that, leading into the WrestleMania X17.
So for me, my introduction to wrestling, 19. That's giving away how old I was because I was 5 at the time. 42 this year. Yes, I'm a grown man that watches wrestling. Um, and I remember my dad taking me to Portsmouth Guildhall. I was born and raised in Portsmouth, England, and the Guildhall was like the local area for events. Event being run by All Star Wrestling, and it was a bunch of local English wrestlers who just were putting on a show, and I had no idea what wrestling was. My dad took me, and I remember explicitly the main event was Steven Regal, now better known as William Regal, GM of NXT, against Dave Fit Finlay, better known as Dave Fit Finlay. And they wrestled a 45-minute time limit draw. Dastardly heel, and it was heel versus heel. They were both heels, and they were both bad guys. And I remember being utterly enchanted and seeing them interacting with the crowd. And from that moment on, every month they'd come to Port, and I'd take my pocket money, which I'd saved up, allowance as a day, and I'd get a front row seat. I'd buy a soda the size of my head, popcorn, and I'd sit in the front row. I'd eat my popcorn, and I'd watch the wrestling, watch the men raps, and I've been a massive fan ever since. Um, it's a magical.
Yeah, see, you got to do your first wrestling event when you were like 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get to do my first one until 2002, which was shortly after Brock Lesnar debuted, and Undertaker was the undisputed champion at the time. Yeah, so
That wasn't
it
a
was
great
it.
run.
No, it wasn't, but it was. But still, but going to my first ever show was kind of interesting, because this was the Raw house show 2 nights before the Jeff Hardy Undertaker ladder match for the
Oh
undisputed
wow.
title on Raw. Yeah, um, one of the matches I remember the most was that you had Raven versus Matt Hardy, which was then followed by Brock Lesnar versus Ric Flair, and Brock Lesnar destroyed Matt Hardy on his way out.
Wow. So
And then
that's a hell of a thing to go. But we do
yeah,
have a bit of a time limit here
yeah.
at
So
Awesome Online.
yep.
So one thing I do want to say is if you've missed any of AwesomeCon Online, be it the stuff that comes before us, stuff that's coming after us, stuff yesterday, stuff tomorrow, stuff whenever, right? Please, please, please go check out the archives at the AwesomeCon YouTube channel. My name, Ben Taylor, aka Isolation Beer. You are
Michael Lindenbaum.
And where can people find you on?
You can find me on the social medias at the Lindenbaum75 on Twitter, Facebook at facebook.com/X75 Productions, and of course everything on the link below that you see at txhdhockey.com/AwesomeMania.
As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Bob T Goldfish. Mike.
Yep.
It's time for our outro.
I love this.
So, guys, gals, and non-aligned pals, The words of the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. Be excellent to each other. Party on, non-Genus Pacific honorifics.
And until the next time we can see you live at Awesome Con, we will see you ringside.
Peace!